A cold wind snakes through the corridors of stone, curling like a living thing around the corners of the hall. It carries with it the hollow echo of footsteps that will never return, ghosts of knights and courtiers long vanished into ambition and disease. The young prince leans against the rough-hewn wall of his father's hall, his fingers tracing the grain of the oak as though it could anchor him to certainty. The torchlight flickers, a trembling heartbeat against the shadows, painting the walls with brief, violent patterns. The scent of damp moss clings to the tapestries, the must of ancient stone mixing with smoke and candle wax, a perfume of vigilance and decay. Outside, the gray sky presses down like a silent witness, heavy and unyielding, pressing its weight upon the castle as if to remind all within that no stone can guard the human heart. He has heard whispers, names carried on soft tongues, promises made in the dark that bend with ambition, twisting loyalty into deceit. Trusted allies exchange secret glances, their words folded beneath courtesy like knives beneath velvet. Every clink of chainmail, every creak of a door in the courtyard, sets his nerves alight, each sound a signal that trust is fragile here. Even the birds circling above the battlements seem complicit, tracing patterns in the air that mirror the hidden alliances forming below. A feast once vibrant with laughter now hangs in memory like a faded tapestry. He recalls the smiles, the raised goblets, the warmth of music, all a mask concealing the glint of steel beneath velvet. Ambition had worn the guise of celebration, and the memory tastes of ash and unease. He feels the first sting of doubt settle into his chest, cold as the wind outside. The rusted key of the treasury, which had once been a talisman of responsibility in his small, untried hands, now presses heavy in his pocket. Its metal is indifferent to fear, indifferent to innocence lost in the quiet calculus of power. He remembers his tutor's voice, a stern whisper from candlelit nights long past. The crown is a mirror of hearts, and hearts are seldom clean. Those words, once abstract lessons of history and strategy, now bleed into present moments with palpable weight. He can see the curves of the tapestries as if they are veins, each thread a secret, each not a lie. The hall feels alive in a way that frightens him. The wood moans under invisible burdens, shadows stretch like hungry fingers, and the flicker of torches casts faces that are not there. The distant tolling of the evening bell seems to measure more than time. It measures anxiety, the slow pulling away of innocence, the calculus of patience that kings must endure. He watches the hall empty, footsteps fading into the cold stone corridors, and imagines the faces behind every door, every curtain, every shuttered window. Some are familiar, some are strangers in familiar shapes. All are calculating, all are holding back. The air tastes of iron, a tang of blood long spilt and remembered, mingled with smoke from the hearth and the acrid sting of burnt candle wicks. The prince closes his eyes for a moment and listens. He hears not just the physical sounds, but the rhythm of intention. The scraping of boots is a code, the whisper of fabric a warning. He thinks of his father, seated on the high chair that dominates the hall, a figure of authority and inevitability. And yet even his father is mortal. Even the strongest stone cannot shield the heart from treachery. In that realization, the boy sees the horizon of his own soul, stretched thin between duty and desire, between fear and courage. He wonders, silently, if courage alone is enough when the world requires foresight, deception, and the endurance of unseen wounds. Outside, the courtyard is a stage of unease. Torches burn with fitful winds, casting shifting circles of light where knights gather, discussing matters in hushed tones, the clink of coin and chainmail punctuating their schemes. He imagines them, plotting in loyalty's guise, their faces carved into masks of obedience. Shadows lengthen, stretching over walls, over gates, over the sleeping village below. Each shadow seems to trace silent betrayals across the stone, a language only the vigilant can read. The birds above circle in restless flight, unaware of the human strife below, yet somehow their movements mirror the strategy, the careful maneuvering that governs these stone corridors. He moves then, a quiet step into the center of the hall, feeling the pulse of history beneath his feet. The tapestries seem to sigh around him, the images of ancestors who had built and defended this castle whispering warnings. Each figure, a knight, a scholar, a queen, seems to speak across centuries, their voices soft but insistent. The crown is not merely an object of desire. It is a crucible of character. And he, this boy on the edge of manhood, must learn to endure its trials. To sit on this throne is not to sit in comfort. It is to carry the weight of vigilance, to measure every glance, every gesture, every word spoken and unspoken. He remembers the first lesson of betrayal, a friend's laugh that carried the edge of insult, a mentor's hand that lingered too long in advice. Every memory sharpens into clarity now, a litany of small deceits that build the architecture of caution. And yet, there is a strange beauty in this tension. The prince can feel it in his blood, the clarity of survival, the edge of awakening. He realizes that the crown asks for sacrifice, not of gold, not of land, but of the simplicity of innocence, of the uncomplicated trust that children take for granted. Each day lived within these walls is a negotiation with shadows, a conversation with ghosts, a trial of endurance against the unseen currents of human ambition. The hall falls quiet again, and for a fleeting moment, he allows himself to imagine another world. One without suspicion, without plotting, without the weight of expectation pressing against the ribs. He feels the wind slip through the open windows and brush against his cheek, carrying with it the scent of the forest beyond the walls, of rain-soaked earth and wildflowers hidden among the stones. He imagines walking among them, free of crown and consequence. Yet even as he breathes this fleeting freedom, he knows it is impossible. The crown waits. It waits in silence, in strategy, in blood remembered. It waits with patient inevitability, and he must answer. As the evening bell tolls again, its sound deeper, more resonant. He turns back to the hearth. The fire is small but steadfast, a flicker of warmth in the gathering darkness. He sees the shadows it casts as companions, allies in the long night of watchfulness. The air tastes of iron and smoke, of burning wick and old wood, of ambition and fear intermingled. And he understands, with a slow, shivering clarity, that to protect this throne is to embrace solitude as a companion, vigilance as a shield, and courage as a blade that must always be kept sharp. The closest hearts may conceal the sharpest knives, yet even among betrayal, there is a lesson, that strength is forged not in innocence, but in endurance. The prince steps back toward the corridors, tracing the walls with steady fingers, feeling the cold stone beneath his palms. Beyond the windows, the sky is no lighter, yet he does not look away. He hears the distant voices, the far-off clang of armor, the rustle of shadows, and he knows that this night, like many before and many to come, will demand more than courage. It will demand foresight, patience, and the quiet acceptance that even love may be a form of treachery. Yet within him, a fragile hope persists, a hope that even amid whispers and shadows, a mind can remain clear, a heart can endure, and a prince may rise to meet the crown's relentless call. And so he waits, silent but vigilant, the torchlight flickering against his face. The hall exhales around him, stone and tapestry and memory, and he imagines the morrow with cautious reverence. Somewhere, beyond these walls, Decisions are being made, alliances forged and broken, the currents of ambition twisting in unseen directions. He does not move, yet he listens. The crown is patient, but it is not forgiving. It watches, and so he must watch in return, a solitary sentinel among shadows, learning that the cost of power is measured not in gold or glory, but in the quiet surrender of innocence, the endurance of unseen wounds, and the readiness to face each day as if it were both a battlefield and a sanctuary. The wind sighs once more through the stone corridors, a final caress before night deepens. Outside, the birds vanish into the dimming horizon, and within the hall, the young prince remains, listening to the bell's slow toll, tasting iron and smoke on his tongue, tracing the grain of the oak with steady, trembling hands, and feeling the weight of the crown settle into his shoulders. A weight that is not yet his to bear, but already his to understand. A lone candle sputters, shivering against the cold breath of the chamber, its waxy tears pooling like forgotten promises. Shadows twist along the stone walls, long fingers reaching into corners where grief has taken root. The queen sits alone, veiled in mourning, her fingers tracing the rough embroidery of her gown, feeling each thread like a lifeline slipping through her grasp. The fabric is coarse, but it is all that binds her to the memory of what once was. Outside, the courtyard lies empty, save for the distant clatter of hooves. Metal kissing stone, echoing like ghostly laughter that refuses to fade. Letters lie scattered across the carved table, edges curling, smudged with ink and tears, bearing the weight of words that were never meant to be read by the living. Each parchment carries a fragment of trust shattered, alliances broken in corridors thick with secrets and the smell of spiced wine. Smoke from the hearth curls lazily toward the rafters, carrying with it the scent of cold ash, reminders of feasts that now feel like sins, celebrations attended by those who would later twist loyalty into treachery. Her mind drifts back to that festival, the night when her smile was armor, the music of veneer over the quiet dread that tickled at her ribs. The king had raised his goblet then, toasting friends who now whispered in shadows, their words wrapping around lies as tightly as ivy strangling stone. She remembers the heat of the hall, the golden torches casting long, wavering halos over faces that would become unrecognizable under the strain of ambition. Every laugh, every clink of cup against cup, now trembles like a memory of betrayal. Through the lattice, frost has woven its delicate veins across the cold stone, fragile as the trust she once placed in those who surrounded her. She traces one finger across the icy pattern, imagining the brittle lattice of promises and oaths, how easily they snap under pressure. A raven lands atop the highest tower, its black eyes fixed and unblinking. Its shadow stretches across the courtyard like a premonition, mirroring the isolation that has settled heavy upon her chest. She can almost hear the rustle of wings in the silence, the whisper of death brushing past the edges of the castle, unseen but present. Her hand rises to her chest, pressing into the armor of her own sorrow, feeling a pulse that thrums with warning. Betrayal, she knows, is a creature without shape, slinking beneath the floorboards, behind closed doors, hiding in the smiles of those sworn to her husband's service. The men who once bent their knees in loyalty now speak in hushed tones, each word a dagger wrapped in silk, each glance a measure of how far ambition may stretch before it snaps. She closes her eyes and listens to the silence that carries its own voice, the wind moaning through cracks in the stone, and the distant clatter of hooves that might be heralding ruin. She remembers the weight of crowns and the burden of bloodlines, the nights spent listening to the kingdom breathe beneath her windows. Every torchlit corridor, every echoing hall, has become a stage for a play of shadows, where loyalty and deceit dance in equal measure. In the quiet of her chamber, she tastes the residue of fear, bitter, metallic, and lingering. It is a flavor she knows well, one that seeps into her bones and reminds her that no fortress can protect a heart that trusts too easily. The candle gutters once more, threatening to extinguish itself in the draft that slips through the stones. She leans forward, eyes fixed on the wavering flame, seeing in its fragile dance the reflection of her own vigilance. In that tremor of light, she feels the echo of futures not yet written, the sigh of allies who will falter, the whisper of enemies disguised as friends. Even now, the kingdom seems to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when the veil of peace will be torn, revealing the raw hunger beneath. From the courtyard below, the clatter of hooves grows nearer, sharper, more deliberate. Shadows stir as if in response, walls seeming to bend inward, pressing secrets into her ears. She inhales, tasting the cold ash and spiced wine mingled with the frost that creeps along the lattice. Every scent, every sound, becomes a map of danger, each memory a warning carved into the marrow of her bones. The queen opens her eyes, wide and unflinching, and in the black gaze of the raven she sees what the heart of a kingdom demands: vigilance, grief, and the courage to confront betrayal before it strikes. Outside, the wind rises, whipping along the battlements, carrying with it the scent of snow and stone. The courtyard waits in silence, a hollow stage where destinies will be rewritten, where promises will break and alliances will fracture under the strain of ambition. She sits, poised between the flicker of candlelight and the encroaching shadows, knowing that every choice, every heartbeat, will leave its mark. And in that moment, she understands that power is never given freely, and trust is never unscathed. Even as the night presses closer, bringing with it the threat of treachery yet unseen, she steels herself. For the kingdom is alive, restless, and the heart of it, though wounded, beats still. The raven stretches its wings and lifts into the cold air, circling once above the tower before vanishing into the gray sky. The queen watches, sensing in its flight the mirror of her own isolation, the warning that vigilance must never waver. And as the candle sputters its last, leaving the chamber in a hush of dark and cold, she presses a hand to the carved table where letters lie like unburied ghosts, feeling the tremor of history, the weight of every choice, and the unspoken question that hangs in the air: who will remain faithful when the shadows come to claim their due? Torches flare in the evening mist, their flickering light trembling across the courtyard, as if afraid to touch the shadows that cling to the castle walls. The banners of Lord Elric ripple silently in the chill wind, their once bright colors dulled by the season's rains and by the weight of unspoken betrayals. In the stables below, a young squire works methodically, his hands moving over the horse's flanks, feeling the rhythm of muscle and bone beneath the animal's trembling skin. The scent of sweat and hay hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the acrid smoke curling from the torches above, a warning that the preparations for war are as much ritual as necessity, and that the war might never come, at least not in the form the men below anticipate. Lord Elric moves slowly through the stone corridors of the keep, his fingers tracing the grooves worn deep into the walls, where treaties had once been sealed with ink and oath. Each mark is a memory of trust, now fragile, now tarnished. The echoes of laughter from feasts long past drift through his mind. Tables groaning under roasted boar, ale frothing from wooden mugs, candles flickering over smiles that hid daggers sharper than the steel they brandished. Every joyous gesture then, every clinking cup, now feels like a warning carved into memory. Alliances are fragile, and loyalty is a coin that flips in the hands of the unseen. From the gallery, the courtiers' murmurs reach him, smooth and honeyed, yet laced with venom. Words meant to charm, to persuade, to disguise the plotting that twists like a serpent in their midst. He listens, silent, feeling the pulse of deceit, the subtle shifts in posture, the glances that linger a heartbeat too long. Outside, a rope swings lazily from a scaffold, moving with the wind's indifferent rhythm, unnoticed by all but him. It is a quiet sentinel of consequence, a reminder of what awaits those who falter or betray. Even in the stables, the squire senses the tension, his grip on the horse firmer, instinctive, as if the animal too understands the currents of danger flowing above. The bells from the town beyond toll slowly, deliberately, each clang reverberating against the stone like a heartbeat of warning. The sound is not for armies or for the distant enemy. It is a signal for the living, for those who dwell in shadowed halls, that history does not only remember the clashes of swords and banners. It remembers the quiet, invisible wars, the whispered threats, the secret handshakes, the eyes that gleam with ambition while lips smile with false devotion. Lord Elric's eyes drift to the horizon, where clouds gather, low and mournful, as if the sky itself senses the fractures in human fidelity. The wind cuts through the towers, carrying the taste of ash from last night's fires and the frost of coming winter. Each breath he takes is a mixture of smoke and ice, each heartbeat a hammer striking upon the anvil of inevitability. He recalls the last council meeting, the gathering where men and women who had sworn allegiance to him now debated behind closed doors, their words veiled in courtesy, their intentions hidden in layers of polite deception. There was a glimmer of fear, a flash of resentment, an echo of envy in their eyes. He could feel it pressing against him, a tide of distrust that threatened to sweep away all the stability he had tried to build. The room smelled of wax and oil, the warmth of torches doing little to chase away the chill that crept through the stone halls. Even the chairs seemed uneasy under the weight of conspiracies, as if the furniture itself had absorbed the tension, the heavy history of promises broken and lives ruined. Outside, the town sleeps unaware of the storm brewing in the corridors above. Lanterns flicker along cobblestone streets, casting dancing shadows that seem to whisper secrets. The river glints coldly under the moonlight, carrying the reflection of fractured banners, the emblem of a lord whose honor is under siege before the first arrow has flown. In the stables, the squire pauses, the horse nuzzling his shoulder, shivering beneath his hands. There is a vulnerability here, a quiet intimacy that contrasts sharply with the scheming above, a reminder that even in places of violence and ambition, life persists in small, tender forms. Lord Elric pauses at the edge of the battlements, the wind tugging at his cloak, tossing gray hair into his eyes. He surveys the land he has ruled, the fields and forests and villages stretching beneath him, each stone and tree a witness to loyalty, love, and betrayal. He sees the thin line between order and chaos, between oath and treachery. And as the cold night presses in, he senses that history's judgment will not come for those who swing swords, but for those who falter when trust is demanded most. A crow cries in the distance, the sound sharp against the soft murmur of wind and bell, and he imagines the shape of events yet to unfold, dark and inevitable as the gathering storm. Inside the hall, shadows grow longer, moving with the pace of candlelight. Courtiers pause in their plotting, each caught in the silent acknowledgement that the Lord sees more than he lets on. Their smiles are thinner now, eyes wary, because in the end, deception carries its own weight, and the heart that beats beneath polished armor may yet shatter beneath the slow grind of truth. Every torch flickers, every rope sways, every horse shifts in its stall. Small movements that echo the tremors of a house under strain. The castle itself seems to breathe, stone and timber exhaling centuries of loyalty and betrayal, of honor earned and lost. Lord Elric lowers his gaze to the hall below, his eyes catching the faint glimmer of dagger hilts tucked beneath cloaks, the subtle tension in shoulders that once were allies. He inhales the smoke, the scent of sweat, the frost creeping under doors, and in that moment, he knows that the battles that shape the future are not fought solely on open fields but within these walls, in the spaces where words are sharper than swords and silence more dangerous than the clash of steel. As night deepens, the wind rises, carrying with it the first hint of snow. The banners sway, torn edges catching the dim light, and the Lord's thoughts drift to the past, feasts of laughter and fleeting friendship, and to the uncertain morrow, where every choice, every glance, and every whisper may alter the path of life and death. He turns from the battlements, the echo of bells fading into the darkness, and walks down the stone corridors where shadows pool like ink, aware that in the quiet that follows, the invisible wars will continue, and the echo of broken trust will linger far longer than the clang of swords ever could. The rope outside rocks once more in the wind, a silent sentinel, and Lord Elric's gaze lingers upon it, unblinking. Somewhere in the cold night, the squire leans against the stall wall, horse pressed close, warmth shared silently, and the world holds its breath. For the battles yet to come are not only those waged with shields and steel, but with loyalty, honor, and the fragile, flickering heart of trust. And as the clouds gather above the horizon, dark and mourning, the Lord knows. Every alliance forged, every promise broken, every betrayal whispered in shadow, will be remembered, long after torches burn low and banners fall silent. Rain hammers the leaded windows of the monastery perched on the jagged cliff, a relentless drumbeat against the cold stone. Each drop slams with the fury of 1,000 unspoken truths, splintering the quiet as if the heavens themselves conspire to shatter the sanctity within. Inside, the flicker of candlelight trembles against the walls, casting a trembling lattice of shadows that stretch like thin fingers across the floor. A lone monk kneels before the altar, hands quivering over a manuscript inked in the language of secrets. Every letter is a heartbeat, every word a thread in the fragile tapestry of power, capable of toppling kings or setting brother against brother. The scent of wet stone rises from the floor, mingling with the bitter tang of burning wax. Dust motes drift lazily in the air, caught in the candle's glow, performing their silent ballet like spirits unwilling to leave. The storm beyond thrashes the courtyard, where once messengers raced, their feet echoing across cobblestones, carrying the weight of fealty in sealed parchments. Now the echoes are ghosts, whispers of betrayal carried on the wind, a testament that loyalty, once thought eternal, can be undone with a single lie. He remembers the king, young and proud, who trusted a brother's oath, who believed in a sister's smile as though it were carved from the light itself. How easily faith bends under the pressure of deception. The monk's eyes linger on the manuscript. The ink, still wet, smudges against his skin. These words are not mere letters. They are the fragile bridge between honor and ruin. One misstep, one revelation, and kingdoms could crumble, leaving nothing but bloodied whispers in corridors of power. The bells toll unevenly, their deep resonance vibrating through the stone, each strike a reminder that time is both witness and accomplice. It listens, always listening, marking the slow unraveling of promises. Outside, a raven scratches at the windowsill, talons clicking against the cold glass. He imagines eyes in the dark, unblinking and patient, judging the intentions of all who dwell within these walls. The wind howls through the cliffside, carrying with it the distant cries of the betrayed, voices that once swore allegiance and now murmur only of deceit. Ink-stained fingers trace the curves of letters, a tactile communion with history itself. Every stroke is a confession and a curse, a chain linking the present to the sins of the past. He feels the weight of countless hands that came before him, scribes who recorded oaths, betrayals, and prayers, all seeking the slender salvation of truth. And yet, the truth is a fragile vessel, easily shattered by ambition, greed, or a single misjudged glance. Outside, lightning forks across the black sky, illuminating the battlements in stark, fleeting brilliance. He recalls the faces of those long dead, soldiers, courtiers, priests, each one frozen at a moment of decision, their choices rippling like waves across the years. The rain hammers harder, drumming a rhythm that mirrors the tension in his chest. Every sound, every flicker of light, is amplified in the cavernous halls, a reminder that history listens as closely as any king or conspirator. He dares not speak aloud, for words themselves carry weight. They can summon armies or curse the faithful. The manuscript rests on the altar, fragile, vulnerable, yet resilient as any living thing. He imagines the ink as rivers of blood, each line a lifeline for those who depend upon secrets kept and promises honored. Yet even as he writes, he knows betrayal is never distant. It crouches in the shadows, patient, waiting for the moment when faith falters and hearts crack. The veil of silence descends, thick and suffocating, pressing against the stone and bone alike. In this stillness, the monk senses the inevitability of revelations, the moment when hidden truths will rise to shatter bonds of blood and loyalty. He sees the corridors of the monastery stretching endlessly, empty yet haunted, each shadow a memory of promises broken. His thoughts drift to kings and queens, to brothers who turned swords upon one another, to sisters whose smiles concealed daggers. History has always been written in this quiet, ink-stained theater of betrayal. The candle guttering in the draught throws one final quiver of light across the manuscript. He leans closer, inhaling the mingled scents of wax, rain, and stone, each inhalation a prayer, each exhalation a reckoning. Outside, the storm continues its relentless hymn, echoing off the cliffs, rattling the windows, and stirring the raven once more. Its black wings beat against the glass, a living omen, a reminder that eyes always watch and time, unyielding, records every act. He pauses, hand hovering above the page, knowing that once these words are complete, they will endure longer than flesh, longer than crowns, longer than the fleeting alliances of men. The monastery is quiet now, save for the storm, the tolling bells, and the ceaseless scratching of the raven. He closes the manuscript gently, as one closes a fragile casket, and for a moment, the weight of history lifts, leaving only the faint whisper of possibility, the fragile hope that even in betrayal, some fragment of honor might survive. And beyond the walls, the storm rages, as it always has, carrying the echoes of what was, what is, and what is yet to come. Somewhere in the darkened halls of power, a promise waits to be broken, a secret waits to be unveiled, and the hearts of men and women tremble on the precipice of revelation. The monk rises, the candlelight flickering across his solemn face, and he knows that the manuscript, humble and unassuming, holds within it the quiet power to shape destiny. The rain hammers still, but now it feels less like judgment and more like a drumbeat leading into the unknown, guiding the story forward, toward shadows yet unlit, toward truths yet unsaid. A torchlight quivers across the frost-lined battlements, the flame trembling as if reluctant to illuminate what lies beneath. The stone beneath it is pale, encrusted in icy tears that cling like memory itself, unforgiving, cold, eternal. A young knight leans against the crenellation, fingers stiff inside leather gloves, knuckles whitening against the hilt of his sword. The courtyard below breathes with shadow, figures moving silently, conspiratorial in their secrecy. Each footfall, each shuffle of fabric against stone, seems amplified in the brittle night, carrying whispers of ambition, jealousy, and fear. The air is sharp with iron from the armory, mingling with the smoke curling lazily from chimneys. It smells of toil and tempering, of fire and blood, of nights spent in preparation for battles both seen and unseen. The knight inhales deeply, letting the scent lodge in his memory, each breath an anchor against the creeping unease. He remembers the night his mentor had taken him here, beneath a sky heavy with stars, and had whispered warnings that seemed almost prophetic. Tales of ambition seeping through families, of grudges buried beneath polished stone and vaulted ceilings, waiting to surface like rivers cutting through the earth, hidden yet inevitable. The candles in the hall gutter, and the wax drips in slow, deliberate pulses onto worn wooden floors, each drop echoing like a heartbeat. A heartbeat that belongs not to him alone, but to the fragile peace of the kingdom. Laughter, once booming and bright in the great hall, has been replaced by a tense quiet, a hollow absence that fills the corners where shadows gather. Walls that once knew celebration now hold the weight of mistrust. Every glance, every folded hand or lowered gaze, is measured, analyzed, catalogued in the mind of a knight who knows that survival is more than skill with the sword. It is the mastery of perception, of understanding the invisible tides that shift loyalty and betrayal alike. Above, a hawk circles in slow arcs, its wings slicing the cold air. Talons poised, eyes sharp, it seems to watch the world below with a patience the young knight envies. He wonders if its flight mirrors the delicate balance he must maintain. Trust placed sparingly, promises weighed like coin. Every gesture a potential spark or a deadly misstep. The wind carries faint echoes of betrayal, rustling banners that flap in the night like torn pledges of fidelity. And he feels their whisper in his bones, a reminder that no fortress, no sword, no oath can fully guard against the subtle corrosion of ambition. His thoughts drift to the stories hidden in the stone walls, tales of families rising and falling, of kings betrayed by the hands they once trusted most. Each corridor, each arch, seems to remember the treacheries that had left its mark. He steps closer to the edge of the battlement, letting his gloved fingers brush the icy stone, feeling the cold seep through him, a tangible reminder of mortality. The courtyard below is a chessboard of human desire, every shadow a potential ally or hidden dagger. In this world, a smile can conceal a blade, a handshake can carry a curse. He knows that loyalty is fragile, that honor can be stolen as easily as coin, and that one misjudged moment can unravel centuries of careful balance. A distant bell tolls, vibrating through the walls, a resonance that speaks not only of time but of consequence. It reminds him of his mentor's words, spoken in the hush of that long-ago night. Power is not won, nor even held. It is borrowed from those too weary or too blind to see the strings. The knight imagines those invisible strings stretched taut between every lord, every soldier, every whispered secret. And in that vision, he sees the kingdom teetering, poised precariously, where a single misstep could topple centuries of order. He lets his gaze sweep over the courtyard once more. Figures move like shadows within shadows, their intentions hidden in the folds of cloaks and the angles of their heads. Every footfall is a question, every gesture a statement, and the weight of knowing how to interpret them presses upon his shoulders. The smell of smoke drifts higher, mingling with the metallic tang of frostbitten air, carrying with it a sense of vigilance, of nights spent awake when the world seems asleep, dreaming yet scheming in equal measure. The knight's mind drifts inward, tasting the cold of snow on his tongue, the lingering copper of blood from a training wound, the metal tang of inevitability. In the medieval world, he realizes survival is never certain. A blade hidden under a cloak, a whispered rumor, the subtle shift of loyalty. These are forces that can undo kings, reduce banners to tatters, and leave even the mightiest armies trembling in the frost. The lessons of history are etched not in parchment but in scars, in walls, in the very air that seems to pulse with remembrance. And yet, amidst this tension, a fragile hope persists. He knows that loyalty can also be steadfast, that courage can shine like a torch in the darkest courtyard, that the human heart, though brittle, can endure. As the wind carries another rustle of banners, another distant footfall, he closes his eyes for a heartbeat, imagining the balance of power as a hawk poised above, ready to dive, ready to strike, yet held in suspension by something unseen. The night stretches before him, vast and cold, and he senses that what will come next, the choices, the betrayals, the triumphs, will be written not only in history but in moments like this, suspended between shadow and flame. A final gust of wind sweeps across the battlements, scattering frost like powdered silver across the stone. The torch flickers once more, revealing the knight's face, determined and wary, eyes reflecting both fear and resolve. The world waits beneath him, silent yet alive, and he knows that the next step, however small, will carry the weight of everything that came before and everything yet to come. The night holds its breath, the kingdom waits, and a single dagger in the wrong hand could set it all ablaze. The sun slips behind jagged hills, a molten orb that bleeds gold and fire over stone battlements, setting the castle aglow as if it has been stitched with molten thread. Rain slicks the cobblestones, each droplet a mirror reflecting torches that sway like restless spirits. The wind carries the smell of smoke and roasting meat from the kitchens, mingling with the sharp sweetness of incense rising from the chapel, a fragrance that binds life to ritual, hunger to devotion. In the dimming light, a lady-in-waiting moves quietly along the gallery, folding silks for the evening feast. Her fingers linger over the patterns, tracing threads that carry secrets, memories, and unspoken prayers. Each fold is deliberate, a quiet act of control in a world teeming with uncertainty. She remembers the day a knight swore fealty in the great hall, armor gleaming, eyes bright with the fire of promise. Yet beneath the polished steel, ambition sharpened like a hidden blade, a hunger not for honor but for dominion. She had sensed it then, a flicker behind the courtesies and oaths, a shadow that now creeps along the stone walls like cold water. The courtiers chatter in the gallery, voices soft but pointed, their steps a rhythm she knows too well, a cadence of plotting, of deception layered in every bow, every nod, every murmured compliment. Each footfall is a drumbeat of caution, a warning that even the walls themselves hold witness to schemes whispered behind doors that never lock completely. A bell tolls, its voice deep and hollow, echoing across the valley. Each reverberation stretches into the corridors, marking not just the hour, but the weight of consequence. Hours will pass in these stone chambers, hours that will see allegiances formed, promises broken, and trust dissolved in silence. Frost begins to glaze the windows, intricate fingers of ice tracing patterns like delicate lace, fragile yet unyielding. She watches her breath rise, a ghostly veil in the chill, each exhale a testament to vulnerability, to the small but profound human pulse beating against the stone's cold indifference. The rusted keys of private chambers glint faintly in the firelight, symbols of power and secrecy, of doors that open to ambition as easily as to betrayal. Each key is a story, a promise, a warning. She can almost feel the weight of them in her palm, the responsibility they carry. Trust is fragile here, exchanged like delicate glass, and she understands that the most devastating betrayals are not the charge of armies or the clash of steel, but the quiet fracture of hearts nearest to the throne. She senses the current swirling beneath the castle's surface, invisible yet potent, a river of desire and fear shaping destinies with imperceptible pressure. The smell of the feast rises now, mingled with smoke and the faint metallic tang of the damp stone. Servants move with muted precision, carrying platters heavy with roasted meats and steaming bread, their faces masked by necessity and exhaustion. Candles gutter and flare, their wax dripping like time itself, each flame a fragile beacon against the encroaching dark. The lady pauses by a window, watching the sky surrender to violet and shadow. In the deepening dusk, figures move along the battlements, silhouettes etched against fading light, their presence a reminder that the castle is alive, that every corridor hums with hidden tension and unspoken intent. In the gallery, a whisper cuts through the hum of conversation, a name spoken softly with caution, as if the air itself might carry it to ears it should not reach. The lady's fingers tighten on the silk she folds, a heartbeat of recognition, a signal that she has understood the language of subtle menace. Outside, the wind gusts through the courtyard, lifting banners that ripple like restless specters, their colors darkened by wet and shadow. The castle breathes with its own rhythm, stone and timber absorbing secrets as readily as it absorbs rain. Every shadow has a voice, every flicker of torchlight a story, and she knows that to survive here is to see the invisible threads that bind ambition, loyalty, and deceit. Her eyes fall on the great hall beyond, where the knight who swore fealty now moves among the courtiers, a predator in polite guise. She recalls the glint in his eyes, the subtle flex of hand and arm as though already testing the weight of power he has yet to claim. Every smile he offers is measured, a tool. Every bow, a contract written in gesture alone. The lady inhales sharply, sensing the fragile balance of this world. One misstep and the delicate web of loyalty could unravel, plunging the castle into silence, suspicion, or blood. Even now, she feels the quiet tremor of history pressing against the stone walls, pressing into hearts too human to bear its full weight. Night deepens and the sounds shift. The clatter of dishes fades, replaced by the whisper of armor on stone, the creak of timber settling under centuries of weight. A lone candle flickers in a distant chamber, its light trembling like a pulse in darkness. Outside, mist begins to gather in the valley, curling through the battlements and stairwells, softening the edges of fear and hope alike. She traces its movement with her gaze, imagining it as a living thing, a shroud that will carry whispers, betrayals, and clandestine steps far from prying eyes. The lady knows that the castle is a mirror of the human soul, unyielding, secretive, and merciless in its reflection of desire and weakness. And in the stillness, she feels the future stir. The quiet interplay of loyalty and deceit has already begun to shape destinies, and the night will be witness. Each shadow holds a choice, each corridor a temptation. The knight's ambition, the courtier's whispers, the servant's unnoticed movements. All are threads in a tapestry that will one day be revealed in firelight and blood. The lady presses the folded silk to her chest, a gesture of protection, of hope, and of remembrance. Outside, the wind rises, carrying the scent of rain and smoke into the high towers. The castle inhales the dark, and for a moment, everything is suspended. The past and future entwined, the fragile present a heartbeat that could shatter or endure. A narrow hall of carved oak stretches before him, its walls steeped in the smell of dust, resin, and the bitter tang of pine tar. Shadows gather in the grooves of ancient panels, curling like slow-moving smoke, and the air vibrates with the distant, muffled clatter of horses, hooves drumming a rhythm of unseen urgency. The king moves slowly, each step measured, tracing his fingers along the cold marble of the council table. The surface is slick under his touch, polished by generations of counsel and intrigue. And yet, today, It feels like ice against skin. He recalls every oath ever sworn here, every hand that raised in feigned loyalty, every whisper that masked intent. The hall is empty, but the emptiness itself feels heavy, a presence pressing on his shoulders. He imagines the courtiers, the lords with their silken cloaks and sharpened eyes, listening, plotting, waiting for him to falter. Outside, the courtyard lies hushed beneath a slate-gray sky, broken only by the scuff of boots on stone. Each step strikes with a threat unspoken. The king inhales, tasting the mingled scent of candle smoke and roasting venison that drifts faintly from the kitchens, a reminder of feasts long past, when laughter covered treachery with the ease of a well-woven tapestry. Above, the flag flutters from the battlements, frayed and torn, snapping sharply in the wind. It speaks to him more honestly than any advisor. Alliances are delicate. Loyalty is thin as parchment. One wrong word, one misplaced glance, and the very edifice of power could crumble like sand through fingers. He feels the cold bite of winter creeping beneath his armor, past the fur-lined cloak, into the marrow of his bones. Frost clings to the windows, etching intricate patterns of ice that glint in torchlight, and in their frozen elegance, he sees the fragility of all he holds dear. The door to his chamber creaks, a high, plaintive note that echoes off the stone. Servants enter, bowing low, their eyes cast downward, yet he knows the truth hides behind their dutiful postures. Every gesture, however humble, is measured. Every smile carries a question. Are you loyal, or merely performing the mask of loyalty? He turns, studying them as one studies a shadow at dusk. Familiar yet unknowable, close yet distant. One face, the youngest of the attendants, trembles ever so slightly. Fear or anticipation? The king cannot tell. Perhaps it matters little. Even loyalty can fracture in silence. Memories rise unbidden. A favored advisor, once a steady presence at his side, had guided victories with sharp mind and sharper wit. The jesting words that once drew laughter now return as echoes of unease. Did counsel turn to cunning? Did strategy become subterfuge? The king feels the weight of doubt settle like a cloak upon his shoulders, heavier than any chainmail. Outside, the abbey bell tolls, slow and sonorous, carrying across stone and courtyard, through frostbitten air, marking the passage of hours that are too heavy with decision. Each peal resonates in his chest, a pulse of inevitability, a reminder that time itself can betray as readily as a trusted hand. He walks to the window, pressing palms against the cold glass, and stares across the kingdom spread like a muted tapestry beneath the muted sky. Smoke rises from distant hearths, curling lazily before dissipating into the winter wind. Villages lie quiet, unaware of the tremors beneath the surface, the secret reckonings that may come with dawn. He imagines the voices behind closed doors, whispers exchanged in candlelight, promises made and broken, and the image chills him more than the frost creeping along the windowpane. Even the strongest throne, he knows, can shatter quietly beneath the softest betrayal. A servant clears a throat, careful, hesitant, and the king turns to meet the gaze of a young page holding a bundle of letters. The paper is heavy with wax seals, each broken or unbroken a testament to allegiance or its absence. The king takes them, feeling the rough texture under his fingertips, each sheet a map of intrigue, each word a potential dagger. He reads in silence, letting the chill of ink and parchment seep into his thoughts. Names, places, dates, all carry weight. Decisions must be made, yet certainty is a luxury he no longer possesses. The fire flickers, shadows dancing against the walls, and the king closes his eyes for a moment. He hears the distant murmur of the courtyard, a soldier adjusting armor, a cart rolling along cobbled stone, and he knows every sound could herald danger or opportunity. The wind howls around the battlements, lifting fragments of frost from the parapets like restless spirits. In the hollow of the hall, his own heartbeat seems deafening, a drum marking the rhythm of vigilance. He recalls the promises he has made, to allies and kin alike, and wonders how many of them will be honored, and how many will dissolve in smoke and fear before the moon wanes. He paces, slow and deliberate, past the carved doors that lead to chambers of council, past the tapestries that whisper tales of glory and ruin. Each stitch, each thread, tells a story of battles won and lost, of kings who fell not to swords, but to trust misplaced. He touches the fabric, imagining the hands that wove it, the lives spent in the pursuit of permanence against the tide of impermanence. Here, he thinks, in these walls, history is alive. Not in the annals, not in the parchment, but in the silence, in the shifting shadows, in the careful steps of those who serve and scheme. A soft cough interrupts him. The advisor, now standing in the doorway. The king studies him, eyes narrowing. The man smiles, politely, too smoothly, and in that gesture lies the ambiguity of allegiance. Words are exchanged, measured, each sentence a dance of intent and caution. The king nods slowly, understanding the calculus. Trust is a ledger, written in deeds, not words. He watches the figure retreat, the door closing with a finality that echoes like a gavel, and he feels the walls close in, the hall narrowing, not in space, but in consequence. Night falls and the hall grows colder still. Torches sputter in their sconces, casting elongated shadows that twist across the oak panels, like fingers reaching for truth hidden in darkness. The king moves back to the marble table, seating himself with a weight that bends not just knees, but spirit. He spreads the letters before him, tracing each line, each signature, each mark, and contemplates the web of loyalty and deceit, of power and fragility. Outside, the wind carries the faint clatter of distant hooves once more, and he senses that nothing waits idle. Every action has a reaction, every choice a ripple. He lifts a hand to the frayed flag above the battlements, watching it twist violently in the cold gusts. It is tattered, yet it endures, fluttering stubbornly against the sky. Perhaps, he thinks, so must he. Even in doubt, even in fear, even in the quiet terror of isolation, the throne demands presence. He draws a slow breath, tasting smoke and frost, candle wax and winter air, and realizes that his vigilance must extend beyond sight, beyond counsel, beyond memory. He must guard not only the walls of stone, but the invisible walls of trust, the fragile sinews of alliance, the delicate threads that hold a kingdom from unraveling. The abbey bell tolls again, distant yet insistent, marking the hour, marking the weight of choices that cannot be postponed. He rises, stepping back from the table, the letters still laid out like bones on the marble. His eyes sweep the hall, the shadows, the torchlight flickering across carved faces of long-dead kings. The past whispers warnings and encouragements alike, and he listens, heart steady, mind sharpened, knowing that dawn will bring counsel, confrontation, perhaps even treachery. And as he gazes through the frost-laced glass, across the silent kingdom, he feels the truth settle quietly within him. Power is never secure, not in walls, not in armies, not even in the loyalty of those closest. It is a fragile, breathing thing, sustained by vigilance, fear, and the courage to act when all eyes watch silently, and all hearts conceal motives. Even the strongest throne can shatter quietly beneath the softest betrayal. And tonight he will remain awake, tracing every shadow, listening to every sound, guarding against the unseen. For in this hall of oak and marble, the future waits, tense, uncertain, and dangerously alive.